This is Heavenscape, Year 1, the Strathmore Chronicles, brought to you by Saturday Night Gaming. The Strathmore Chronicles, written by Tony and Jessica Stevens, narrated by Tony Stevens and Dan Stevens. Solaris Showdown. His bones ached with the weight of a hard life as he woke. As always, his sleep was riddled with night terrors and the ghosts of lost comrades. He groaned as he pushed himself away from the bed, fighting the urge to continue sleeping. It was becoming more difficult to convince his body to move with each passing day. The weight of his legs seemed unsteady at first, but soon gained their stride as he maneuvered toward the washroom. The light hummed to life as he entered the room. His eyes took a moment to adjust to the light. In the mirror, a scarred and hardened man frowned back at him. The years of war had chiseled a much older appearance than he knew himself to be. He cupped his hands together underneath the faucet, and a steady stream of water began to pour. The cold was refreshing as he splashed the water against his face. He blinked water from his eyes, just in time to see a figure behind him in the mirror. He growled, spinning around and reaching instinctively for his sidearm. Every muscle and sinew tightened for combat and survival. The room was empty. He turned slowly back to the mirror and glimpsed the figure again. A woman, her hair dark and flowing, her eyes burning like wildfire. He blinked, and she was gone. But he could still feel her hand graze the side of his face. Her soft touch seemed to be burned into his flesh. He steadied his mind and tried to shake free from what must have been a waking dream. He took his time grooming himself to perfection. His appearance mattered. Many looked to him as an example of what they should be. He shaved the day-old stubble from his face and combed his short, dark brown hair. This daily routine, unchanged since he first became a soldier 10 years ago, steadied him and calmed his mind. His stride was much more balanced as his body became accustomed to what it must do. He walked back into his bedroom and saw his uniform hanging from the closet door. Pressed to perfection, there wasn't a wrinkle or stray thread in sight. An assortment of medals and ribbons weighed heavy on the breast of his jacket. Each of them were meant to symbolize a victory or achievement. To him, however, they were a constant reminder of those who gave their lives under his command. He pushed down the feeling of sorrow to the deepest recesses of his mind as he pulled the burden of his uniform onto his body. He walked past the mirror one last time to ensure his appearance met the standards expected of him. He picked up his gun from the bedside table. He double-checked the slide and safety. He removed the clip and ensured it was fully loaded. He nestled it tight into the holster attached on the right side of his belt. He'd probably never need it here, but he was always prepared, no matter the situation. Finally, it was time to face the unexpected nature of his day. His pace was steady and brisk as he moved through the sleek and polished hallways of this place he now called home. It had been almost 3 months since he was ordered to take command of the Solaris Sky Station, and he was still adjusting to his technologically advanced surroundings. He had been reluctant to accept the reassignment, but he would never defy a direct order from the commandant. He was a soldier. He was at home on the ground piloting war-torn battle mechs, but every day that he walked these spotless halls, he silently reminded himself he must be the best person for this assignment if Commandant Xavier chose him. He walked on to the command deck of the station and nodded as bridge officers snapped to attention and saluted. He always found himself in awe of the command deck, with its sleek control panels and seamless mechanical efficiency. The Alorians were pioneers in the field of mechanical engineering, and the Solaris Sky Station was the pride of the Alorian military. He listened carefully as his subordinates gave him their daily reports, and then he gave orders to maintain the current coordinates in the lower stratosphere of Valos. He entered the command quarters adjacent to the bridge. The large porthole above his desk showed an endless carpet of white fluffy clouds below the sky station, and an infinite blue above. He touched the panel on the wall, and the window tinted darkly. Settling into his chair, he tapped the monitor built into the desk and activated the station's AI.
Good morning, Commander Strathmore. Alorian time is 0546. Propulsion, navigation, weapons, and life support systems operating within normal parameters. Personnel count is 973. There are 6 new incident reports, and the brig is now at maximum capacity.
He frowned and rested his elbows on the desk as he leaned forward. 6 new reports in one night, and 4 from the night before. The increasing violence on the station made him uneasy. His years of combat and survival told him something was not right. Something was simmering on the sky station. Some negative energy. He thought of the woman in the mirror and clenched his teeth. Access all files. Sort by date and pertinence. Authorization. Arthur J. Strathmore. Several panels on the desk shifted to reveal a retinal scanner and a fingerprint analysis pad. He opened his eyes wide and placed his right hand upon the screen.
Final authorization code required.
Justice is the sum of all moral duty.
Voice recognition and passphrase accepted. Priority message intercepted at 0325. Origin point unknown. Encrypted. Marked urgent. Your eyes only. Dr. Stein. Thaddeus Miles.
Arthur's eyes narrowed. His suspicion was confirmed. He wasn't the least bit surprised that Stein was connected to whatever was stirring the violence on the sky station. Thank you, Solaris. Turn off all monitoring protocols.
Monitoring protocols disabled.
His frown deepened as he began reading the message intended for Dr. Stein. 0706 1123 Sitrep. Detailed analysis of the blast radius will be priority. Current estimated death toll is at 10,000 and counting. No residual radiation readings within the greater Alorian barrier. It is my current assessment that the terrorist group operating out of Riverside has been handled. However, the port city is a total loss. Operative codenamed Demon reported a complete success. Awaiting further instructions. Signed, Lieutenant Commander Caldwell. Strathmore felt his blood begin to boil. Riverside had been his first appointment as an officer and had meant more to him than anyone would ever know. Commandant Xavier had entrusted him with the security of an important Alorian military facility on the outskirts of Riverside Port City. During his time there, he had come to appreciate and admire the hard work and dedication of its citizens. And he had fond memories of the beautiful women, the unique foods, and the loyalty of the community. Now, according to this classified report, everything he had kept close in his heart about Riverside was nothing more than a memory. Solaris, lockdown terminal. Give me the current location of Stein.
Personnel designation, Stein, TM, located in Engineering, Level 1, Core Power Supply Systems Terminal.
Strathmore stormed out of the command quarters. He ignored the worried faces and inquisitive stares as he hurried off of the bridge. Making his way to the engineering deck would normally be a short trip, but as his adrenaline surged, time seemed to stand still. He had a long-standing resentment of Dr. Stein, and even suspected him of several crimes against the people of the Alorian nation, not to mention the fact that Stein himself had surgically installed all of operative codename Demon's cybernetic modifications. If anyone could have engineered such a devastating weapon, it would have been Stein. Greater Aloria had a long-standing relationship with Riverside Port City. Not only would this tragedy affect the economic structure of the Alorian government, but first and foremost, he saw this loss of life, and his own personal loss, as unforgivable. Commander Strathmore wanted answers, no matter the cost, and he would have them now. It was rare to find the CO of the Sky Station on the engineering deck, and this was apparent by the shocked faces of several low-ranking officers. They hurried to salute Commander Strathmore as he rushed past them. He was a man on a mission, and nothing would deter him from completing it. Arthur had spent so long serving the Alorian military as a combat officer that this docile environment unnerved him. He easily reverted to old ways of thought, categorizing events as threat levels. Currently, he viewed Dr. Stein as a high-level threat to the Alorian nation and to all the peoples of Valos. He ignored all others before him and walked with speed and intensity to Stein's last known location. He came to a door marked Engineering, Level 1. He rushed through his authorization protocols and scowled at the door, irritated it hadn't opened faster. On any other day, he would have been overcome with sheer awe as he entered the expansive room. It was one thing to go over system schematics, but it was something altogether different to see it in person. This sky station truly was a miracle of modern mechanical engineering. Power units, transistors, and access terminals adorned the walls. In the center of this massive room stood a tremendous cylindrical containment unit affixed with several power couplings. 7 levels of catwalks, balconies, and railings circled the station's soaring power core. Inside the core, a murky crimson energy churned about, beating against the glass. It throbbed, thrashed, and pulsed like something alive, something angry. A low hum of trembling energy surged through this place. It felt as if his insides were being turned upside down. To Strathmore, this feeling was similar to being too close to a concussive grenade when it went off. His skin crawled, like an itch from the inside. Arthur forced himself further into the room. The air tasted metallic the further he went, and the air seemed heavier. The energy vibrated every cell in Strathmore's body, increasing his sense of unease and amplifying his anger. Stein stood no more than 10 feet away at a monitoring control terminal embedded into the core. He was a tall, barrel-chested man. He had a clean-shaven head and groomed his beard into a tiny chin strap. His white lab coat hugged tightly onto his larger form. His right arm and the majority of the right side of his face were modified with his own signature cybernetics. He glanced up as Strathmore marched closer to him.
Commander, how nice of you to visit with me today. Is there something I can do for you?
Strathmore looked into the one good eye of the scientist. He did his best to ignore the cybernetic ocular implant where the doctor's right eye used to be. Its wide red lens shifted, monitoring Stein's surroundings. Strathmore searched the face of this man he had spent so much time despising. He had known Dr. Stein since he was a young man, since he first enlisted in the Alorian military. He often found himself trying to decipher the motives of this cold, calculated man. Out of all the people he had ever met, Thaddeus Miles Stein continued to be the one and the only one he could never figure out.
You know exactly why I'm here, Stein. I want to know why.
I'm afraid you'll have to be more specific, comrade.
Thaddeus Stein had a very strange, thick accent that Arthur had never heard from anyone else. The play of ignorance infuriated Strathmore even more.
Riverside, you monster! I want to know why. All those people. All those lives.
Dr. Stein moved away from his workstation and stepped slowly towards his inquisitor.
Now I see. I heard of this, though I was not where you hid. The terrorist cell using Riverside as a base of operations forced the hand of our commandant. Obviously, the loss of innocent life is regrettable. However, in this instance, necessary.
Arthur's blood began to boil, his head pounding from the rage.
How is mass murder necessary? How can you justify this?
You must understand, the greater good must outweigh the lives of the few. A few thousand die, but millions now live in peace. They sleep tonight with safety and security.
Safety? Security? You extinguish people's lives and call it peace? You steal futures from innocent people. You experiment on unwilling children. You push your agenda on the Alorian nation. How can you sleep at night?
The doctor turned away from Strathmore and faced the massive reactor core. The movement blocked his cybernetic arm from Strathmore's view. He placed his left hand on the vibrating panels as a distraction. The energy inside reacted instantly, slamming into the barrier. The metals that composed his advanced prosthesis began to shift and transform. Unknown to Arthur, the high-tech appendage was now reshaping and forming an energy cannon.
It seems you know a great deal more than you should, comrade.
His eyes still watched the seething crimson energy as it battered the panels trying to reach his hand.
I told the Commandant I'd keep an eye on you. Now it seems he had a good reason to suspect you. Duh.
Stein turned his head, eyes flashing as he studied Arthur intently. The cybernetics of his eye began to whir, and the red lens glowed bright. With enhanced speed, he whipped his energy cannon toward Arthur and released a blast of deadly might. Arthur Strathmore realized just in time the doctor's intent. Relying on years of battle-tested experience, he rolled out of the way. The pulse of energy flew wildly and exploded against a control panel on the wall. Stein grunted in aggravation and shifted his body to take aim again. Strathmore pulled his sidearm free from its holster. The weapon in his hand became an extension of his own instincts. He freed several rounds from the chamber as he rolled across the cold steel floor. He rushed for cover behind the massive power core, hoping Stein wouldn't be foolish enough to fire at the core. He forced himself to slow his breathing and steady his mind. This was the moment he had waited for. That vile doctor finally gave him what he wanted most, a reason to kill him. The energy churning within the core grew more violent. Arthur could feel it in his bones, like a poison. He tried to focus his mind. He knew he couldn't stay here long, whatever this power source was. It was obviously deadly. He emerged from cover and fired several more rounds. One of them struck true as it ricocheted off the armored plating around Dr. Stein's cybernetic eye. The large man stumbled back with the slightest groan of pain. Arthur settled back into cover as he reloaded his weapon. He continued to try to calm himself, but he felt completely consumed by anger. His pulse was pounding harder than ever before, and his mind was a fog of fury. He couldn't seem to shake it. He knew he had acted irrationally. He should have played it safe, but he couldn't help himself. He craved vengeance. It was consuming his mind even now. Stein readied his aim again. The bowels of the energy cannon ignited in a white-hot glow. This time, a twisted smile spread across his face.
I always had high hopes for you. It is not a complete loss, though. There are more ready and able to take your place. Das Vidania!
Stein released an enormous amount of energy. The shot hit the containment chamber head-on. A large crack formed across its surface, and pure red energy began to claw free from the chamber. Crackling power pulsed through the room as it was released in a steady stream, the color of blood. The crack widened as the crimson vapor bled from its prison.
Warning. Power core breach. Lockdown initiated. Engineering levels 1 through 7.
An alarm began to sound, and reinforced doors slammed shut on every level of engineering, the metallic boom of each echoing through the massive chamber. Arthur watched with dread as the red energy crept toward him. Almost like smoke fleeing from a lit cigarette, it moved effortlessly and with subtle grace. He knew he couldn't leave his cover, and yet he also could not allow himself to become poisoned by this radiation. He was truly at a loss, with no idea what to do next. Just as all hope fled from him, he felt a soft touch upon his cheek. Faint whispers floated around his head, and a familiar feeling crept up his spine.
Don't give up, Arthur. I need you. Take what is yours.
He opened his eyes to see the vermilion vapor dancing around his body. It almost seemed to take form, and he was reminded of the beautiful visage he saw in the mirror earlier this very morning. Her touch still burned on his cheek. He couldn't form words, or even think clearly. All he knew now is that he wanted to be at one with her. The containment glass continued to strain and crack, releasing more radiation. Arthur Strathmore stood confidently and took aim at the stress fractures in the reinforced glass. Without a moment's hesitation, he gave in to the voice, beckoning him, and emptied the clip into its target. The barrier ruptured, and an energy exploded forth, seething with rage and indignation. A look of shock and awe overcame Stein as he watched, unable to react in time. He dove to the ground and tried to find shelter from the raging power. Ripples of raw energy coursed through the air as the station's power supply was unchained. The alarms blared louder.
Warning. Catastrophic power systems failure. Life support systems offline. All personnel evacuate immediately.
Arthur stood strong as wave after wave of unchecked elemental power crashed into him. He could still hear her voice calling to him. She needed to be free, and he had to be the one to do it. He knew this was what he was born for. This was his reason for existing, and it was consuming him. He mustered all of his will and pushed himself forward toward the shattered core. His flesh felt like it was on fire, and his bones trembled from the sheer force. It was like being caught within a tornado, except it didn't want to harm him, merely caress him. He reached forward into the massive well of power. In that moment, he felt something reach back and take hold of him. Stein watched in horror as he saw the burning energy take shape in Arthur's hand. Strathmore's eyes flared with rage as a massive vortex of terrible power filtered into him. The commander's stance changed as if to support a great weight, and the floor itself seemed to crack beneath his feet. The sounds of the alarms were deafening. The air itself seemed supercharged and alive.
Warning. Catastrophic power systems failure. Life support systems offline. All personnel evacuate immediately.
Every muscle tensed in Arthur Strathmore's right arm. His veins felt like they would explode as pain tore through him. His bones felt like they were shattering and healing over and over again, and his skin felt new and raw. He couldn't hold back the screams any longer. The crimson power finally took shape in his hand as a mighty claymore. The massive blade blazed with living flame. It pulled at his very soul and seemed to feed upon his anger. He felt the blade trembling with terrible power as energy continued to flow from it steadily. Arthur Strathmore turned and met Stein's eye. The two men took a step towards each other, oblivious to the destruction around them. The world was tearing apart. The Solaris Sky Station exploded in a blinding red light. The sky over Valos rained fire and bodies and debris into the desert below.